I'm here with Kyle Newell, and this is the third installment of Jersey Muscle Radio. Today we're going to be covering muscle building nutrition and some non-conventional hypertrophy methods you guys can probably use in the gym during your next training session. So uh, let's
Cool.
roll. Let's do it.
Yeah. What's up, guys? As Chris said, we're gonna, what we'll be going over. And we thought this would be a cool topic. I know for myself personally, after coming off the bodybuilding shows, just really getting back to keeping, training interesting and fun and thinking outside the box. So let's start with Chris. I mean, typical muscle growth programs, you're gonna have your standard like 8 to 12 reps, four
Yep.
set. What do you do? Do you do anything different besides that when the goal is muscle growth?
I think it all depends on where you're at. Depends on what your history of training is. Depends on how long you've been training. Um, what kind of training you've done in the past. Usually, you can get away as long as the intensity is high. You can get away with the four sets of 8 to 12. I mean, that's pretty standard. But it all depends on kind of how you lay your exercises out too. Um, Lately, I just started uh, training in more of a bodybuilding split, I guess, myself, and I started doing. Now, the way I break it up now is I train 3 days a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday I'll do chest and buys. Tuesday or Wednesday I'll do back and tries, and then on Friday I'll do legs and shoulders. And the way I break it up is I do one compound movement with a bar, four sets of like you know 6 to 8, so it's a heavier compound movement. Then I'll drop down and do isolation work with dumbbells or a machine, 3 sets of 8 to 12. I'll do 2 sets of a bodyweight movement, so maybe push-ups, as many as I can. I'll max out on those, and then I'll do a static hold at the end. So there's like different tiers to the training and different pieces of equipment, but it's still kind of systemized, and it works. It's been working pretty well. My body's been changing doing that. But again, it all depends. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways you can break up your split. It all kind of depends on if you're strictly into bodybuilding or if you want muscles, that bodybuilding look and strength, or if you want that bodybuilding look and performance. Like you have to kind of take your goals and then kind of go from there, based on what you want to do. So
Yeah, no, I mean those are great ideas. Yeah, I mean some of the things I've been toying with, I always try the stuff first, and then we'll put it, I'll put it on the athletes or the clients. Is I've been lifting 4 days a week after the contest. Each day is a big one of the big four: overhead press, deadlift, squat, or bench. And then, for example, the other day on overhead press day, that's going for max strength, but then I wanted to really hammer back and shoulders. So for back, I set it up where I was doing time sets. You have to be where you can see a clock or a stopwatch, and I was hitting 30-second sets. And I put it together as a triplex. So it was a machine row, it was a different row, and then a face pull with the cable machine. And I gave myself like a 10-second transition to get to the next exercise. So if we look at what the books say with muscle growth, it typically takes a set of 30 to 70 seconds to hit muscle growth.
hmm
Um, so with doing that, I'm hitting almost 90 seconds of tension because, a 10-second rest to me is still, if we look at post-activation potentiation, you're still activated. The muscle fibers, they're still activated. So, and I find it really challenges the mental toughness. And I know one of the goals for muscle growth or fat loss is to create like a metabolic disturbance,
right.
and that can lead to hormonal changes. So, that's been one method I've been toying with as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and for those of you guys who don't know, it's not really about the sets and reps or the weight you use. It's about the time on the tension. So it's about for muscle growth anyway. It's about how much time those fibers are how much time those fibers are working, or how much time those fibers are under some sort of weighted stress. So when you hear Kyle say time under tension, that's what he means. I don't know if you guys know that, but so when you lift for muscle growth, you don't want to just go through the motions. You actually want to feel those muscles. I know a lot of guys they just hit the bench and they just bang out their reps, but You can get stronger that way. You probably put on a little bit of muscle, but if you're not feeling those muscles working and you're not feeling the tension in those muscles, you're not going to get the maximum potential that you possibly can. So it's important to kind of remember that when you're lifting for growth.
Yeah, and it's and people can do it as self-experiment. Try 10 reps with the regular cadence like most people do, and then try drawing that set out for a minute of 10 reps. Like you're
Yeah,
saying, two totally different feels, and people really have to set their ego aside when they train like that, because obviously you can't lift the same amount of weight.
right. It's not about the numbers. There was this cool method that I tried. I was doing for a little while. I was testing out like uh, it's called Metabolic Surge. It's a Nick Nielsen program. It's one of those ebooks that Nick Nielsen put out. And he's got some crazy like muscle building uh, set and rep schemes that he puts in there. Like one was I think he called it time volume training, where you basically don't quote me. There's a few variations of this, but I think that's the one where it's like you set a clock for 15 minutes and you do a set of 3 reps every like 10 seconds or something like that. So like you do a set of 3 reps on squats every 10 seconds for 15 minutes. It is brutal. And when you can't get 3 reps in 10 seconds anymore, then you go to 20 seconds. So 3 reps every 20 seconds. When you can't get 3 reps on the 20, you go to 30 and then 40. But this is like a 15-minute span, so you're banging out squats for 15 minutes. And it's rough. I mean, you are sore the next day. And you could do this with like, your chest presses or bench or whatever, And it's pretty brutal, but it goes under that time under tension, mentality and theory that like you said, that 10-second break, your muscles aren't recovered enough to not be under tension. So that's a cool little variation you can try. But just expect to be sore, and you're probably not going to be using, like you said, the same amount of weight that you normally would, because it's a lot of volume.
What's the name of that book again?
It's called Metabolic Surge.
And who
Metabolic
are,
Surge, and it's by Nick Nilsson, Nilsson.
okay, I have to check
Yeah,
that out.
he's got some cool programs, and he's like one of those guys that figures out like really cool different exercises you can do, stuff that's like completely off the wall. But it just gives you some variety. This is it here. This is a shameless plug for Nick Nilsson. But I got it printed up. I think he offered it to be printed, so this is what it looks like. But it's normally an ebook. He's got a few programs out, but that's cool. But this one's got like a ton of different types of muscle building, you know, set styles, and they're kind of different. Like you wouldn't really think of it yourself. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah, that's neat, man. I got to check that out. And a quick aside, I know some people have been asking. We are going to set up a website, guys, and we'll be putting all of our book recommendations on there, so you guys don't have to memorize what books. I know some people have been asking. But that kind of reminds me of Charles Staley with his strength density training.
hmm
And he had a similar concept. I think the book is called Strength Logic.
okay,
But again, let's say and I found that this was a good way to put almost to use as a starter program.
right,
Remember, I had my dad doing it a number of years ago because he's a mess physically, um, as far as his joints and the shape he's in. So I put him on machines. Let's say it was a push and a pull. Okay, you have 15 minutes. You're getting 10 reps on each. Like you're saying, in the strength density, how many supersets can we get in within those 15 minutes? The next workout, you have to beat that.
right,
And it also reminds me when I was doing my internship with Coach Jay Butler at Rutgers, they used to do something called Rutgers Bench. So we use variations of that at my gym. But they would have a certain percent, let's say it was 65% of their max, and they would set the clock on 10 minutes, and you had to get 55 reps within those 10 minutes. So again, and yeah, it's all similar, but if you guys noticed that the main theme is time. Somehow this is time.
right, right. Time keeps you accountable. I mean, too often you see guys go to the gym and they do a set and they get up and they look at their their self in the mirror, and then they sit down for 5 minutes, and then they talk to a couple girls, and then they talk to their boys, and then they just kind of hang out, and then by next thing you know, it's like 8 minutes have gone by, and the intensity has gone down. Um, so if you really want to grow, I mean, you have to be intense with your training. I mean, there's no way around it. Strength training is a little bit different. You could take strength training set by set and take those 5 minute breaks if you want. But if you want to grow, I mean, look up. I know some people don't agree with this stuff, but look up high intensity training, like Arthur Jones, like old school. I mean, he's a big proponent of Nautilus machines, but um, the intensity that he speaks about is what you need to grow. No, it doesn't matter if you do it with low weight and high rep sets or heavy weight and low rep sets. The intensity just needs to be there. It needs to be like you need to borderline. I mean, he uses an example that I've read about a few times that if you didn't want to throw up after a set of barbell curls, then you didn't do them right. Like that's the intensity you need to grow, and most guys don't get that. And that's why most people look exactly the same because the intensity is just not there. They train for a series of weeks or months, and the intensity lacks. They don't switch up their program, and they just look exactly the same. So the intensity needs to be there all the time, all the time.
Right. Yeah. That's right on. Another way, we're talking about the intensity that I think is really good for muscle growth is complexes, where you're getting X amount of reps with, there's something that we use at the gym called the bear, which, I took from Jamie Lewis at Chaos and Pain. But you can't put the bar down until you get your reps, 30 reps, 40 reps, and it's a combination of different movements. It's like a clean into a front squat, into an overhead press, or,
right.
I know on a great example on that show that's on TV now. Have you watched American Muscle yet?
I haven't, but everybody's talking about it.
Right, yeah, it's a cool show, man. But he had him doing like a shoulder complex last time, but they couldn't put the bar down until they had 40 reps.
Right.
And it all comes down, it's guys, training for muscle growth too it's going to challenge you mentally.
Yes.
You're gonna have to push way outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I think keeps me coming back to bodybuilding training. It's different in that sense. Okay, it's different than CrossFit. CrossFit, the workout's hard, but I feel like bodybuilding's a different animal. I mean, when you're training for muscle growth, every rep is a battle. And yeah, you get that reward of that little bit of a break when you're done that set, but you are training when you're training for bodybuilding or muscle growth, you are feeling that muscle and it's burning like hell and you have to finish. And I think that mentally is what drives me, and that's what keeps you coming back to bodybuilding style training is that aspect. You're not going to get that with doing burpees. You're not going to get that with doing Olympic lifts, but you get that when you do high rep sets or you do 5 or 8 or 10 heavy singles where you don't know if you can finish, but somehow you get the bar up. That is what I love about that style of training. The intensity is super high, super high, But if people think that CrossFit workouts are hard, I'm sure they are. I mean, I don't do CrossFit, so I wouldn't really know. I'm sure they're very hard workouts, but it's a different hard. It's a different hard. I mean, you don't know what hard is until you do 10 sets of 10 on bar squats. Then you tell me what's hard. You know what I mean? Your legs are burning, you want to throw up. You take a 30-second breaks in between. That's hard. That's hard. Yeah. Different animal. Totally different animal.
Yeah, it completely is. And I mean, training is, it's very specific. So there's specific adaptations to impose demand. So,
right.
If you want to train for muscle growth, you have to train for muscle growth.
Right.
You're talking about the intensity. I can't remember the rep scheme we used to do. It was me and 2 other guys that were competing in bodybuilding. This is going back like 7, 8 years ago. And it was like Thursday nights. We would make squat night. And we would do, I want to say we were hitting 25 sets. And I mean, I remember the one time I cramped so incredibly bad afterwards. But we would go in, and it was a little crazy, maybe overtraining, I don't know. And we would just go, it was like 25 sets of 10 or 25 sets of 15. And we would just, you're up, the next guy's up. And then we would just keep going. But it's you got to do some crazy stuff like that sometimes, and then
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's like you're saying, man, it's the intensity.
It's got to be there. It's got to be there. And of course, you know, you like you said, you're training for your goals. So if your goal is only muscle building, then you got to train for muscle building. If you're doing some sort of hybrid training, like I do, and I'm sure you do it at some point, um, you know, something's going to suffer. So if you're doing hybrid training for fat loss and muscle growth, your muscle growth is going to suffer. If you're doing hybrid training for strength and muscle growth, you're going to get strong and you're going to put some muscle on, but you're not going to get that amount of muscle that you could be getting if you were just training for muscle growth. It's totally different. So you got to keep that in mind. All these guys who preach like these workouts that are, you know, kind of off the cuff and kind of cutting edge, and they're kind of um, you know, hybrid styles of muscle growth. You know, it's they will work for muscle growth, but you're not going to look like a bodybuilder. It's just not going to happen. If you want to look like a bodybuilder, you have to train like a bodybuilder, and that's just the way it is. Um, so
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue for us into the other aspects, guys, of muscle growth. Obviously, diet and sleep, which we said before, we'll do a whole separate thing on sleep because if that's not on point, you ain't gonna grow. But then diet for gaining mass, that's a one of the guys was asking about. Okay, how do specifically he asked about how can you use intermittent fasting to gain mass. So the basic principle of nutrition, guys. If you're trying, I always tell the athletes, if you're trying to build a house, you need the bricks. Okay, it's very energy intensive to build the muscle. Once you build the house, it's not as hard to maintain it. The electrical, the plumbing, everything is there. But with intermittent fasting, if you're going to use that approach and you want to gain muscle, it still comes down to calories. So I'll let you real quick. I just got to run to the bathroom, but talk to. Let's start talking about basically whatever you think, like with the calorie equation and gaining mass. I'll be
yeah,
right back.
yeah, sure. All right, guys. So when it comes to fasting, I don't know if that's the best way to kind of go about putting mass on, mainly because of calories. Now I know there's a lot of programs out there that preach, you know, fasting in the morning, having big meals in the evening, and that's all well and good. But are you really getting enough calories in that 3 or 4 hour window in the evening to put on that muscle mass that you are working so hard for? So I don't know if intermittent fasting is the best idea to put mass on, especially if you're doing it every day. One thing that I've been doing, and I think it works pretty well, it helps reset my metabolism, it helps get that growth hormone spike that is associated with fasting, is I'll take one day out of the week, like a Wednesday or a Thursday, like a day that I'm not training, and I'll fast. I'll do a PM to PM fast, so which means you fast from the night before, so your last meal, if you ate at 9, 10 o'clock, you fast for the next day till 9, 10 o'clock at night, and that's that'll be a PM to PM fast, and then the following day you can usually load up on a little bit more food or carbs or something like that to kind of um, reset your metabolism. Because when you fast, you kind of put yourself in a caloric deficit, so the next day you can kind of overdo it a little bit. I mean, not too much. You don't want to go overboard, but you can eat a little bit more carbs or kind of cheat a little bit. Basically, just so you're on, so you know where we're at, Kyle. I just told them about intermittent fasting probably not being the best plan of attack for putting muscle on. Because in my eyes, I feel like you probably don't get enough calories. Because there's a lot of programs where people fast every day. They fast in the morning, and then the bulk of their meals is in the evening. I know from my experience, in the evening, I take a 4 or 5 hour window and eat, but that wouldn't be enough to spark new growth for me personally. I know to lose body fat it works great, but because it
Yeah.
puts you in that deficit. But as far as muscle growth, I don't know if that's the best. I do what I do now, and I was just saying it before, is I do a PM to PM fast on a day that I'm off. So like the day that I'm not training, I'll fast from the night before my last meal to the following evening, um, which would be around the same time. So if I ate at 8 o'clock last night, I'll fast till 8 o'clock the next day. and I'll eat like a decent sized healthy meal at that meal. That's kind of what I've been doing now. It works pretty well, and allows me to keep my meals throughout the day on the other days too. So,
Yeah.
what do you think for fasting for growth? What's your
Um, so if we look at, fasting and basically something that mimics fasting for people that don't try, like an intermittent fast of 16 hours. Like when I was getting ready for my bodybuilding show, or when you got ready for your bodybuilding show, essentially, if you're eating 16, 1700 calories a day, you're mimicking somewhat of a fast. But now on the cycle diet with like a high carb day, what a fast can really help with is insulin sensitivity and then calorie partitioning. Because a lot of guys will try to gain muscle, they up their calories, and they add more fat than muscle.
That's what happened to me. I got really fat.
What's that?
That's what happened to me. I got really fat.
Yeah, and
I
it comes
got
down to
really
calorie
fat.
partitioning. We want to
Yeah.
control where the calories are going. So if we're more insulin sensitive, and we kind of like, with me, I know, I do my Thursday night cheat meal and then Sundays. I'm so depleted by that point that I can't get full. So I think the intermittent fasting, if you did a 16-hour one, could definitely work for growth. Because again, like we were saying, I prefer like on my diet days, like today is a one meal day, but the rest of the diet days is usually two. It comes down to calories. So the way I'd set the calories, if I was going to put it on, if I were putting a diet plan together, regardless of the strategy we're implementing, is I would take their body weight and multiply that by 18 to 20, and that's a starting point I use.
Mm-hmm.
For older guys, sometimes I go less than that, and I adjust it, every 2 weeks. So if you weighed 200 pounds and you want to gain some size, you're talking about 4,000 calories a day. Which it's pretty hard, guys, when you're eating, good healthy food on a day in day out basis.
A lot of oatmeal.
Yeah, a lot of oatmeal
A
and
lot of oatmeal.
yeah. So it's I think you got to figure out what works for the person individually and for yourself. I think I've found what works for me. But yeah, the nutrition's got to be there one way or another, guys, if you're trying to gain mass and the calories. Now, what are your thoughts, Chris, on like hairy workout nutrition? So what they're doing before the workout, if they're doing anything during or after, do you place importance on that, or speak about
Yeah.
that with like muscle growth?
Yeah. I mean, it all depends. It all kind of depends on what your starting point is. If you're really lean, then I think that you can get away with a little bit more leeway with the peri-workout stuff. Um, Muscle growth, a lot of it has to do with nutrient timing too. So you want to make sure that you are at the very least, getting like a shake with some simple carbs in it after your workout. That's the big one. Maybe a little bit of creatine and some leucine if you want to go crazy with some supplements. But for the most part, you just want to keep it protein and carbs. Uh, Intra workout, that's personal preference. I feel if you have a big carb meal before you work out, you're okay.
Hey, sorry about
Usually
that.
you're okay. It's all right. Usually you're okay if you have a big carb meal or something with carbs before the workout. An hour or 2 hours before, you're usually pretty good. I know a lot of guys sip on Gatorade and stuff during the workout. Again, I think that all depends on kind of how you eat the rest of the day. If you're low carb in it the rest of the day, you can probably get away with it. If you're eating high carbs all day long, to me, it probably doesn't matter. So,
Yeah, and it's I think I like to have people sip on branched chains. We want to make sure they're fueled for the workout, and
right.
if you're going to add calories in, whether you're doing the intermittent fasting, hey, if you're doing an intermittent fasting or you're just doing regular, the biggest meal, in my opinion, should be post-workout when insulin sensitivity is raised. Because again, we're trying to take advantage of the calorie partitioning. We want to control where those calories are going. We want them to go
Right.
to the muscle.
Right.
Um, and it depends. Yeah, people have to figure out on a daily basis what they can handle. Some days might be low, some days might be higher. But
Right.
a lot of people, like you're saying, if they just try to go high with carbs or whatever, whatever, I think it really comes down to the calories as well. They're just going to get fat.
Yeah. Yeah. And fat cells don't go away, so that's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
I guess they do after what, 10, 12 years or something like that, but
Yeah, they can die. That's if you don't make them any large. I mean, it's
right,
almost
right,
like you're going to be in a deficit for that long.
right. Yeah,
Um,
so I mean, take it from me, guys. I did that when I was younger. Like my mentality was, oh, I got to eat to get bigger. So I was lifting a lot of heavy weights and I was eating everything I possibly could. I didn't know anything about nutrition, so I just ate. Like I eat like half a pizza and then I wash it down with like 3 scoops of protein. Like I was disgusting. Like I was sick, and I ballooned up. I got really fat. I was like 235. I'm 5'6", so I was like 235. Had a lot of muscle, but I was fat, you know. Um, and now when it comes time to get lean, like I have a problem because the fat cells are still there. So I'm like probably 10 or 12% right now, but you wouldn't know. You probably think I was 16 or 17% just by looking at me. Um, so if I like want that look, I have to get really lean. I got to get 6, 7%. So don't do that old school approach where you just have to eat everything in sight because it doesn't work. There's better ways.
totally.
There's better ways. There's better ways.
I've been there, done that, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about you know what it comes down to, and that's with training or nutrition. It comes down to kind of educating yourself. I think back in the day, like there wasn't YouTube and there wasn't Google and there wasn't a lot of these sites. Bodybuilding.com just started out, so that wasn't like around, uh, and it wasn't as prevalent as it is today. So we would just listen to guys in the gym when whatever they told us to do. I would just do it because that they were the big guys. They knew what they were talking about, or so I thought. But now with Google and YouTube and all these other mediums, definitely just educate yourself on your topic or educate yourself on your goals. There's a ton of stuff out there. Sometimes it's hard to weed through the BS, um, but you know, just read as much as you can about it, and the truth will come out. Or just ask us, and we'll talk about
Yeah.
it on one of the next episodes. But yeah, just don't listen to idiots at the gym. that's the
Yeah.
that's the main point, I guess. Just do your research, read some books.
Yeah. I think one other point I want to make before we wrap it up too is it's easier, guys, to gain muscle when you're leaner. And I'm not talking about 4 or 5%, but something I learned from Poliquin, men should be 12% or less. And what that's going to do is keep your insulin sensitivity, which we keep going back to, because that's going to control where the calories go. The better the insulin sensitivity, the more likely you are to put stuff, food nutrients to muscle rather than fat.
Right.
So you want to keep that body fat in check, and you got to, yeah, like you're saying, you got to. These people got to get rid of the dogma and the myth that they have to just gain a lot of weight to gain muscle. You see with a lot of pro bodybuilders, they don't really need to do those bulks because most of the time they come in looking exactly the same year after year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the guys that need to do the typical bulk diet. Those people are like the high school kids that are twigs.
Right.
We need them to eat their face off,
Right. Right. Yeah, that bulking stuff, like it does, especially if you're natural. Like there's only a certain amount you're going to gain within that year. So um, don't overdo the food. Figure out what your starting point is, or figure out your maintenance level. Like Kyle suggested, 18 to 20, multiply your body weight by that, um, and it'll give you some sort of starting point. And then you just got to record. It's a pain, but you got to record like what you eat, how many calories it is, and then you know what tweaks to make. If you're gaining weight, then keep the calories the same until you stop gaining. And you can always one thing that I read too, and it's a good judge, is if you measure your waist. And if you add more than 2 inches on your waist, then it's no good. So then you have to take the calories down a little bit. So it's a little bit of a gauge. It's not perfect, but it's something that will keep you in check, so you're not getting like overly fat. But the more you keep track of and the more you write down, the easier it is to reassess as you guys reach your goals.
Yeah, you can't measure you can't improve what you don't measure or track.
Right. Absolutely. So it's a constant reassessment. And if you're not recording anything, then you don't know where you've been, and you don't know where you're going. So you have to write stuff down and reassess every week, every 2 weeks, and that just comes down to how bad you want it. So that's a whole nother radio show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we covered a lot of good info though.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys want anything else from us, or you guys have any specific topics you want us to talk about or cover, feel free to shoot it over, leave a comment below this video, or I think it's you put the video on your blog and I put it on my blog. So
Yeah.
if you guys see those blogs, what's your blog? Just say it, I guess.
Newellstrength.com.
Okay, mine's jerseybeast.tv. So just check out the blogs, and leave a comment under the video up there or whatever, and we'll get your comment. We'll respond and hopefully shoot an episode for you guys based on what you guys want to see. So I think that's it.
Cool,
Anything else?
Yeah, well, you know, we got some cool things planned in the future with this, guys, as far as the website and all that. So appreciate you listening, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
All right, later, guys.